This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
It's Another Side of Midnight with Lionel. Now, to the Bernard McGurk Studios, here's Lionel.
Alrighty, Lionel with you, and this is Another Side of Midnight. Our number is 800-848-9222. That, of course, is your ignition switch to call up about something which we are not talking about, which I think is always the best part of talk radio. Understand something. What makes talk radio great are callers. And what many people consider to be bad callers, I love. Especially people who one time, every now and then will call up thinking they're talking to another show. I had a woman one time call me thinking she was talking to a doctor. And I proceeded to give her a series of, they amuse me. And one of the things which is interesting and I wanted to talk about is I've always had these books, these titles that explain me. One of them is called Maybe It's Me. You know, maybe it's me. Maybe I don't get it. In my family, my father, who was just the absolute best at coming up with the most diplomatic of reviews. My mother, who was a great cook, one time she made something, I don't know what it was, and he did not particularly think it was the best. So he turned to her and says, maybe it's my mouth. Which always remained one of my favorites. So maybe it's me. Maybe I just don't get things. Maybe I'm from another planet. Maybe I'm the alien. Maybe I'm it. That's it. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe. Because here's the way I look at things. Let me be very, very clear about this. Absolutely the most critical issue of them all is the idea of there being life elsewhere. And I don't mean some bacterium in some sulfur fountain in some extraneous planet. Oh, nay. I mean really, really, really intelligent beings and the like. And so this is, as far as I'm concerned, we should drop everything that we're doing. And I'm not saying this gratuitously. I truly believe this. I think this is the most incredible issue there is because the implications are incredible. And I have not mentioned the idea of what it is vis-a-vis our relationship to God and the like. It's a completely different issue. Oh, and by the by, another aspect of it, somebody had mentioned Steven Spielberg's movie, which is a dog, an absolute dog. It's horrid. Absolutely horrid. This is Spielberg? Spielberg did this? But I digress. And every now and then somebody will call up, and this is very interesting, very, very interesting. I find fascinating. And this is a person who just believes nothing, believes absolutely nothing, and will call up angry, almost sarcastic, to the point where you're wondering, what is the problem with this? And they'll say, don't you understand something? With all of the technology we have, don't you understand? Everybody's got a camera. Everybody's got a camera. And it's like, why, sir? Why the anger? I don't know. I just, And I think maybe sometimes people, perhaps, they might, I don't know what the word is. They might resent our open-mindedness. But let me proceed with this. So I want to address this. People say, what about the camera? What about the camera? Do you think your camera is really good taking pictures of stuff in the sky? Do you? Do yourself a favor. The next time you're out and the moon is beautiful and it's right there, take a picture of it with your camera. Tell me what that looks like. I'll wait. Tell me how good that camera picked that up. You can barely see. You don't even know what it is. Or if something is there, try taking a movie of it with your hand shaking in this kind of a, dare I say, this tremulous reaction. Go ahead. Take a picture of it. The moon's right there. And by the way, we could also talk about perception and illusion and perception and reality and why the moon illusion is interesting. Why when photographers take pictures of the moon on the horizon, it looks much brighter and larger and bigger than it does at the apex. But that's for another story. The problem is that you got to ask yourself, what does proof look like? Now, let me remind you of something which is important. And I think our good friend Dr. Sky doesn't understand this. There are about, in the history of talk radio, maybe 5 great trollers, callers, cranks, chronics, and I was one of them. And I would put up my history against anybody else. And one of the things I did was I was use different voices. You really didn't know it was me. And I'm not going to mention any names, but one of the keys to doing this is don't use the same voice over and over. But in any event, I was listening to the great Dr. Sky, who mentions, people that we share. Stanton Friedman, I interviewed him, one of the greats, the great Dane Wigington, who's been a friend of mine for years regarding geoengineering. Don't call it chemtrails. But somebody called up with this issue of hostility. And I thought to myself, that's really unfair. Now, I'm going to say something, which is, I think, important. And I've never done this. And I will not do it now. But whenever somebody brings up, it's like, who do you think you are suggesting there are people and critters and life, beings elsewhere? There's no evidence of that. I always respond with, okay, may I mention religion? And this is when they say, wait a minute, watch it, buddy. It's like, no. You see, when you insulted me right now, I thought this was a game. I thought it was my turn. So let me see if I can insult you regarding religion. It's okay, right? And people will say, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you were very hostile right now. You basically insulted me. You basically called me daft, stupid, impressionable, intellectual lout, right? That's what you did. So I'm going to return the favor. I'm going to take something you might understand, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. And that's religion. And our rule, and I'm not going to do it, of course, but our rule is you don't do this. That's different. Really? I see. I said, one of the things which is very interesting is that if there's no evidence of something, you call it faith. But then we get into all kinds of arguments. And again, that's not the purpose of this. What I'm saying is, look at what people will use when they use the term, I believe. I believe. I've been through this my whole life. I believe that fate brought us here. Really? Yes, this was meant to be. Why do you say that? You mean you hope? See, believe and hope and think and wish, all of these words are part of a continuum. I wish, I hope, I think maybe. Was it Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropo, the three fates, of mythology, and always trying to predict the future, and, we were meant to be. I know there's a life after death. I know there is. How do you know that? I just know that. And I know that when we die, we're going to see everybody that we've ever known, and it will be happy forever. And I asked a question one time. I said, let me ask you something. If you die at 98 and you were, let's say, in pretty bad shape, and you hit life ever after, do you pick up at 98? Or does it even matter? And when I asked the question one time, not even being sarcastic, I get, what do you mean by that? Where are you going with that? One time I asked somebody, there was a notion of stillbirth. It was very, very sad, or let's say a miscarriage. And I said, well, how would we meet a miscarried child? So my point is, and I'm not here to argue that. What I'm here to say is simply this. Why is your question as to my belief, why must I tolerate that? Why must I lump it and nod and say, yes, you're right. Yes, I understand that. Yes, I know there's very little proof of that. But when it comes to religion, oh, no. Oh, you can't say that. And then we get into the notion of atheism, which atheism is used as a pejorative. Atheism means without theism, like a Buddhist. A Buddhist doesn't believe in a God, in a classic theistic, theological, deistic God. Is that what you want to get into? And whenever you talk about this, especially, it goes nuts. Let me give you another example. There was a case years ago, a Supreme Court case called Moondog. And Moondog dealt with the issue of whether one nation under God in the Pledge of Allegiance was constitutional. Well, the Supreme Court never got to it. They punted, which is another story. But I asked people, I said, where do we get off by having one nation under God? On a quarter? I don't have any change. I think it's still there. I don't have any change anymore. Remember, did you ever keep pennies? Did you ever have like one of those big water jugs filled with pennies that you've collected? They don't exist anymore. But I digress. What I'm saying to you is this. This is not a referendum on religion. But what I want to ask is this very serious question. And especially if you think this is complete and total bunk, why is it that the greatest subject matter in the world, and I attempted this last night, where we got off in the subject of rabid skunks and raccoons for reasons I will never understand. But anyway, such is intellectual entropy, ladies and gentlemen. But my point is, why is it that we have such a hard time with this? Why is it that we expect these things to talk to us, to meet with President Trump, to land a craft on the White House lawn? It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Have you ever been driving and pulled over your sedan, gotten out and gotten on all fours and looked at an anthill and explained nuclear fission to an ant? No. Why not? Well, maybe that's it. Or reasons that we don't understand. But it's so interesting the way we apply our own sensibilities. Well, since they don't communicate with us and we don't have an 8x10 glossy, they don't exist. As I was talking to Moondog, which was his nickname in high school, Mr. Drosh, I said, how would you quantify love? How would you put that on a meter? Does love exist? Yeah, prove it. That's just a feeling. It doesn't rear its head. Well, it does, but not the way one thinks. So we're going to continue with this 800-848-9222. And it's a very, very simple question. How do we explain to people what we believe when they demand, quote, proof. This is Lionel with you on Another Side of Midnight.
The Other Side of Midnight with Lionel on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Our number is 800-848-9222. By the way, this week, I don't know, I was explaining to Mr. Drosh very, very slowly, emphasizing every other word. But this week, David Clayton Thomas, the lead singer from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, the original Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Well, not actually the original one, the later version. In any event, passed away at 80, I don't know, whatever. He was one of the greatest. This is, by the way, this is ancillary information here. But he was one of the greatest singers ever. And he spoke in a particular style, or sang rather, a particular style, which I call a white man singing black that doesn't sound gratuitous. For example, Michael Bolton, that's a white man trying to sound as though he's soulful. And it comes across as not legitimate. Corey Wells from Three Dog Night could do this. Bill Champlin from, if you want to hear something from Lee Ritenour's Captain Fingers album, listen to him sing, Isn't She Lovely? You will swear it is a black man. It's a legitimate, and sometimes it's their own particular style. I would think Bill Medley, in many respects, has a style. But David Clayton Thomas from Canada, I don't know why that makes, because we look at Canada as this kind of a pablum, bland, there's no soul. He was phenomenal and great and just wonderful. He was just, without a doubt, one of the absolute best. Now, my friends, again, the question I have for you is simply this. How do you believe and why do you know what you know and why do you think what you think? And this is a real question because this gets into the epistemology, the study of the science of things. When you look at, for example, radar returns, the evidence and the mystery, what do we actually know? When I give you radar findings and data, pilot testimony, military encounters, sensor data, or data, as they say, and government acknowledgments, why did governments move from there is nothing to see here to officially acknowledging UAPs? What explains objects displaying extraordinary acceleration, maneuverability, and apparent lack of conventional propulsion? What do you think that is? What is it? How do you think these folks are going to make their presence known? Why is that such a problem? Michael McDonald, it's funny, our good friend Mr. Drosh, by the way, who, of course, is a cross between, it's very interesting, Bennett Cerf and I think, it's hard to say. Well, put it, I think Bennett Cerf and maybe Rip Torn. But in any event, he said Michael McDonald. Michael McDonald, by the way, brought out, we're talking about music, going back to that again, spoke in a very indecipherable way. Most of the time, we don't know what he said. Oftentimes confused his soul. Hall & Oates, interesting. Daryl Hall, John Oates, worthless. John Oates, worthless. Andrew Ridgeley from Wham, worthless. These are the people who just... I one time said to a friend, I'll get back to the subject for a moment, but I said one time that Gladys Knight, the Pips, broke up. I made this up. I said, and now her group is traveling as And the Pips. And I was very serious about that. But I digress. But going back to what I'm saying, now back to our very serious subject here. We must be serious. There's no room for laughter. There's nothing funny about this. This is very serious. But the question is, what is it do you think you need? What do you think you need to have the belief system where you say, yes, I believe in this. Let me give you another side issue, and I'll tell you the way I think. If I were to ask you, do you believe in the notion of the ghost, an apparition, a soul, something that after death revisits us, maybe a vision, maybe a relative? Is it a dream? Is it an apparition? Did it happen? Do you know how many people have said this? Do you know how many people have said that during the day, without anybody at all suggesting otherwise, that they themselves saw someone? Now, if somebody says, I believe in a ghost, and I've heard this my entire life, what am I to make out of that? What, are they crazy? Are they making it up? Or is there something there to this? And I believe there's something there to it. Why? Because everybody is saying identically the same thing. Somebody said one time years ago, that's crazy, this chiropractic business. It's mumbo jumbo. Why do so many people go? Why do so many people claim benefits? I don't know. So the first issue is, when there is public acceptance of something throughout years, throughout the generations, throughout thousands of years, what does that mean? If there are people telling you that they saw something that you know and I know completely does not resemble reality, what do you make out of that? Let's go to the phone, shall we? Let's go to the phones and your thoughts and calls. If I could, no calls regarding skunks or raccoons tonight, please. We've exhausted that subject, and I hope we never return to it. Let's go to a man who goes by the name of Carl. He was named after actor Carl Betts from the Donna Reed Show. He's in New Jersey. Carl, you're on Another Side of Midnight with Lionel.
Hello, Lionel. I just want to mention the idea that the statement made by Carl Sagan that extraordinary claims requires extraordinary evidence. And I think that's something to go by. But, of course, we all have our idea of what extraordinary evidence happens to be.
Well, can I just say, Carl Sagan was a gatekeeper. So was Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the biggest phonies ever when it comes to this. Thank God, I think we finally jettisoned Bill Nye, the science guy, that charlatan. And Carl Sagan may be terrific to talk about the skies and the billions and everything, but when it comes to ET, to UFOs and extraterrestrials, I believe, or I have a suspicion, that somebody told him, Carl, Neil, there's a lot riding on you saying the right thing. Michio Kaku, by the way, I always say Gesundheit when I hear his name. Michio Kaku, I guess the third part of the Troika.
Yeah,
he said,
I know who he is.
Well, that's good. Very good, Carl. I'll give you a gold star. Do you know who Hendrik Witbooi and the Hottentots were? No. So don't act like a big shot. Just kidding, Carl. Just kidding. But Michio Kaku said that he believed in this. You don't see him too much anymore, do you? You don't see him. I mean, maybe he's older, but he's not like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Because, Carl, I think somebody told him, if you want to make sure that your door card works, if you want to be a part of the Hubble, if you want NASA privileges, don't you ever even suggest that there's the possibility of extraterrestrial, extra biological entities, EBEs. Because if you do, you're going to cause a lot of people to start questioning, where is this, etc. Does that make sense to you, Carl? What do you believe?
Well, when you say believe, of course, we all have our belief systems of different.
What do you think?
And what do I think personally? My mind is
no.
It seems to me
on
that,
behalf of the state of Indiana. No. What do you think personally?
Well, could I say something that in that area, something is happening. We can see that there's been a large amount of information coming in from people who have spotted various kinds of phenomena that it's hard to explain, but yet they did see it, and there's a preponderance of information coming in from pilots and things of that sort.
Sure.
So we do know that there's things that people claim they have seen that defy
But what does that
our
tell you?
physical laws. But in the meantime,
But what does that tell you?
There's nothing tangible available to us to
Wait a minute.
see actually that
What-
these things exist. So
Wait a minute. Stop for 1
my mind is
second.
open
Stop
to
for
it.
a second. Wait. Stop for a second. Because let's break down what you said. If 1,000 people say they've seen something, you say there's nothing tangible. What does that mean? They just told you they saw something.
There's no ET that we have. Something that we know gives that extraordinary evidence to back up the extraordinary claims.
Why do you need something tangible? If somebody says, I saw
Well,
something.
that's my belief. That's my belief system.
No, wait a minute. No, wait. Let's don't abandon this. Before anybody knew what cancer was, before anybody knew what certain pathologies were, before anybody knew about Tourette's or schizophrenia or mental illness, if people would say, I'm seeing this, these people are acting a particular way, something is happening. I believe that in the cases of STDs, that certain diseases are transmitted, and I believe, and I've met people. Now, what do you need before you say, okay? Now, I mentioned this before. Do you believe that humans are in love? That they've this thing called love. I'm sure you've been in love. And I don't mean loving the Knicks, but I mean loving perhaps somebody of the opposite sex in romantic sexual passion. Are you familiar with that concept?
Well, of course I am. But
Now,
if we talk about language,
what's
that's
tangible?
another thing. Language.
Wait a minute.
expresses Our thoughts are, and our language is
Wait a
not
minute.
perfect either. So we
Wait a
have that
minute, wait a
problem
minute.
With language.
Tell me what's tangible about that. Prove it.
What
All
about
these
love?
people. Wait a minute. Those people are saying they're feeling something. Okay, prove it. And you would say, well, there's something tangible. If I had the love version of an ET, well, if you have thousands of people, if you have military personnel who are flying jets that are equipped with nuclear weapons, and we trust them, and we say, I saw this, what do you want other than that?
I don't equate feelings with actual objects that we might see flying around.
Why? Why?
Feelings happen because of what's happening internally, physiologically in us.
How do you know? No.
Hormonal activity, what happens in our brain, which is something which is not fully known yet, how our consciousness works and things of that sort. So I don't equate them. I don't equate something.
Well,
like
you should,
feeling with
because
something that-
well, you should,
I know, that's my
because
belief.
what you're doing is okay. But you should equate them because both of them deal
Well,
with
I don't think
large
so.
number. Let me finish. Large numbers of people reporting something that you don't think is tangible. One's a feeling, one's an observation, one's something in the sky, another one is internal. When there were people who started to report schizophrenia before we knew what it was. Imagine being the first person to come across somebody with Tourette's before it had a name, somebody who was in the coprolalia field. What I'm trying to say is, when enough people say they see something, they believe something, they've witnessed something, do you think it's mistaken? Do you think they're confused? They're what? Do you think they're making this up? You think they're delusional?
They could be saying that they've seen something, but do we have to associate what they see in terms of these objects that seem to be defying, like I said, our physical laws? Do we have to accept that they're connected to ETs necessarily?
No, wait a minute.
Unless you
Stop
want to
for a
believe
second.
it, then we get into
Now, wait a
the
minute.
system again.
Now, tell me, Carl, that if you and I were sitting there and I said, hey, look, Carl, there's an orb. Look at it. It's spherical. It's flying at a very high speed, and it's stopping. It's stopping on a dime.
Yeah.
It's turning right, it's turning left. It might be dividing into two, dividing into three, disappearing, shape-shifting, taking off, flying. It seems as though this is not, and I see it, you see it, this is not something that is a weather balloon. It's not the planet Venus. Now, Am I supposed to look at this and say, this is not under the intelligent control of something? Or is it what? Randomness?
It could be an illusion.
Now, wait a minute. I can see an illusion, and you're next to it. In the case of the Phoenix lights in 1980 or so.
I'm next to an illusion. What do you mean by that?
No, wait. If you and I are seeing the same thing, we're both observing an illusion simultaneously. Yeah. That's odd.
No, it's not.
As I was trying to say, and in Phoenix, the Phoenix Lights famous case, including the governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, hundreds of people all saw the same thing, described it in detail. They didn't have camera phones or whatever, but they described this particular craft. All of them, even kids. And by the way, in court, believe it or not, when a child describes something, it almost has a certain, there's sometimes more of a weight because children, you could tell, there's like an honesty there. Now, when hundreds of people are seeing identically the same thing, including the governor, who was a former fighter pilot, the governor of Arizona, who see a craft about the size of a football field hover over mountains, hundreds of people, you're going to say, well, it's an illusion. Is that what you're suggesting? There's nothing to that? You think that's what? Swamp gas? How can you listen to them and say, nah, you're mistaken? The floor is yours, sir.
Okay. The idea being that some of the sightings could be illusions. I didn't mean to say that all of the sightings are illusions.
I would agree with you.
Some can be illusions, and some can be actual sightings of various kinds of unexplainable phenomena.
No. Wait. See what you're doing? See what you're doing?
See what you're doing?
See what you're doing? You're saying,
what am I doing?
Well, you're saying this is unexplainable. What do you need? What do you need for something from another system, dimension, planet, whatever, where you say
I mentioned something
that
tangible. I mentioned something tangible. Now,
it's flying over your head. A craft that is the size of a football field, witnessed by hundreds of people, flying with lights and a shape, hovering, no sound whatsoever, and then gone. All of them saying.
My point is that I have trouble connecting it to ETs necessarily.
Now, let me stop you.
There are other possibilities that come to mind. For example, you want an example?
Wait.
An example of
take this example of my case. And you can look it up. Phoenix Lights. What did all of these people witness? What did you think it could be other than, as you say, quote, ETs? What do you think that is?
Well, that's what I'm about to say. The idea is that there's other possibilities that exist, it seems to me, and it has been expressed by people.
For example.
That there are other possibilities. And for example, Michael Masters at the University of Technology in Montana has come up with the idea and has written a book about it, in the sense that these observations of these UFOs or UAPs, whatever you want to call them, happen to be, he claims at any rate, happens to be people in the future who are visiting us. It's us visiting us, not ETs from space. And so this is another possibility, evidently.
No, wait a minute. Stop right there. Right there. You're telling me that an ET, and you say this almost in a pejorative, and I appreciate your candor.
No, I'm not
ET.
saying pejoratively.
No. But I mean, that's what you call it. Okay, maybe that's shorthand. Let me get this straight.
Yeah, but you're putting stuff in my in my words.
You said ET.
I didn't say that.
You're but you're saying these
in a questioning sense.
But let me finish this. Let me get this straight. You call it ETs. You're saying that the ET, the idea of something that is existing now from some other place now, some other planet or star system or inertial bubble or parallel universe now, that is, wait a minute, I'm not done yet. That is less likely than us visiting ourselves from the future? That you could accept? Wait a minute.
Listen, wait. I'm accepting it as a possibility. My mind is open to possibilities.
Except ETs.
That's just another possibility. No,
your mind is not open. Excuse me, sir. Your mind is not open to possibilities. You said
you're telling me what my mind is open to, and you don't even know what my mind is open to.
Yes, you have rejected whole. Wait a minute. No. You have rejected whole cloth the possibility of an ET.
No. I haven't rejected it. I just said.
Yes, you have.
My mind is open to possibilities.
No. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying.
And the idea of people visiting us.
That's not what you're saying.
In the future.
That's not what you're saying.
My mind is open to all these.
No, that's not what you're saying. You have never once in our conversation, which I thoroughly enjoy and I appreciate this, but you have never, since you started talking, ever indicated or intimated or suggested or even hinted that there's the remotest possibility that a, quote, ET could exist. You say, well, I read a book by this other guy, and it could be something from the other space. That's more tangible than something existing right now.
No, I didn't say it was more tangible.
You have rejected.
It's one of the possibilities.
Tell me that a possibility exists of there being a, quote, ET. Do you believe that's a possibility?
Yes, of course.
No.
My mind is open.
Seriously.
Like you said before, my mind is open to these possibilities. It's just that I don't directly connect it, automatically connected to it being ETs. That's my point. That's all.
What do you think it would?
Possibility.
If you saw a huge Pegasus-like creature floating in the sky, what would you think? You would say, well, I'm not suggesting that. I say, well, what do you think that would be? What I'm saying is you go out of your way. You have, and I say this with all due respect, sir, you have an allergy to this notion of there being an ET.
You're analyzing me again. You're analyzing me.
I am. Absolutely. You will create this false acceptance modality where you'll throw something out like, well, I read a book and it could be that. No. Deep down inside, you think this is BS. This is, as we say in West Tampa,
no, you're telling me how I feel. How do you
That's
know
exactly
how I
what
feel
I'm doing.
When
Am I right?
Deep down inside of me. Again,
but
you're
I'm
analyzing it from a psychiatrist kind of position.
But I'm right. But Carl, I'm right. Carl, I'm right.
Belief? Is that your belief?
I am right.
Is that
I
your
am
belief?
telling you, you do not believe
that. Is that your belief?
What? What, that you can't understand this? Yes, that's my belief.
Yeah, is that your belief?
I believe that you cannot accept and quote ET. There's something in you that rejects
system,
it.
Then that's how you believe. You can believe
but
that.
You're saying this. But you're saying this. If somebody were to, let's say, I know this is a terrible example, but if somebody were to, let's say, spout racist things, and I said, I think you're a racist, they go, well, that's your belief. It's like, well, you keep saying this. Yes, I believe that.
That's it.
You have
that's
this.
An example
you
in favor
think.
of the
Let me
argument.
ask you.
That.
Let me ask you this question, Carl. Final question. And I appreciate this. You're a good man. I like your style. You're spunky. And as Lou Grant said, I hate spunk. But do you believe that there is a?
Remember him? Get off my phone, you creep.
Do you believe? Whatever the term is, belief.
It's the belief system now. And you said before anybody can believe what they want to believe.
This is also. Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you if you believe it. Do you believe that there is a remotest of possibilities that we are the only life form like this? I don't mean a bacterium in the visible universe. Do you believe that's a remotest that we could be the only people out here? Is that possible?
Well, that might be a possibility. Why not? If you have you heard of the Drake equation, by the way?
Oh, that's been so debunked. Speaking of Stan Friedman, that is so old.
It hasn't been debunked.
Oh, yes.
He didn't mean it to. By the way, he didn't mean it to be something definitive.
No.
He threw it out as a kind of rule of thumb idea about whether or not there are civilizations capable of communicating with each other. What's the probability of that? So he just threw it out that way. He didn't mean it to be.
No, he didn't. No. It's even more possible. In fact, it almost approaches 1 in terms of probability. You know, Carl, I appreciate this. And you know what? We need you. And the reason why we need you is that you make us ask ourselves what we believe in. And we also have people say, kids, don't ever act like that man, Carl. I kid, of course. I'm being totally facetious. You're a good man and a gentleman. Carl, please, I beg you, call me again, good sir.
Well, thank you for having me on the program. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, sir.
I didn't come on the program with any kind of negative feeling about anything.
No.
I said my mind is open. That's what it is, really.
That's one of the funniest lines ever. But, Carl, I love you. Have a good day, sir. Don't ever change. 800-848-9222, whatever it is. I love that. I love that. And by the way, Mr. Drosh, when I do that, and thank you for your call, that means, you know what I mean? You know what I mean, Bubba? There you go. He is, let me say, sharp as a marble, this guy. Let me tell you something. This guy, let me tell you something. For those people who don't realize this, what you can learn, what you can teach in vocational therapy is just, sky's the limit. So never turn your back on somebody. Sure, they can't spell. Sure, they don't make eye contact. Sure, they don't understand the simplest of imagery. But that doesn't mean that they can't have a career in radio. 800-848-9222. More coming up on Another Side of Midnight with Lionel.
The Other Side of Midnight with Lionel. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Yeah, we lost David Clayton Thomas. You know, Robert Klein, who is, I think, one of the best, his Child of the 70s album changed my life. But he said that harmonica is always great on Civil War campfire scenes. Where you from, boy? Big battle tomorrow. And accordions, he said, are good for either pirate ships or prisoner war camps. Ah, yes. Robert Klein, my hero, till one day he unleashed on me because he thought I was apparently conservative. You know what it is to have your hero just unload on you? But I don't care. The Child of the 70s is still radio comedy perfection. And the absolute drivel. You know who reminds me of you, Mr. Drosh, is Shane Gillis. I like him a lot. He has a very unique style. Have you ever looked at what makes people laugh? You want to talk about what's mysterious? Watching a baby laugh. And you think about this. What is it? And I know there are people who spend a lot of time for just some of the stuff that we do. How laughing is not necessarily what you think it is. Sometimes it's a sign of you. It's almost paroxysmal, it's diaphragmatic. You convulse. It's like the inverse of crying. But sometimes laughing can be sinister. Like, you know what I mean? Oh, that's not good. Well, he's laughing. Well, not really. But when a baby laughs, think about what's it. To be able to capture and to address the novelty of what something is. And also, what is the most interesting thing that we saw, in fact, Carl helped us a lot. I want people to be more and more, familiar with the idea of thinking about something that they think they know the answer to. Why? Think about something. What is it? What is it that makes us do what it is that we do? Now, I got news for you. One time I went to a kind of a MUFON sort of a convention, and I met some of the craziest people I've ever met in my life. 3 things I've met. MUFON, lunatic. 9/11, quote, truthers, out of their mind. And a knife show. I've been to gun shows before, no problem. But a knife show? Have you ever been to one of those? This is a whole nother thing. It's all up close and personal. And this, I'm telling you, that is really interesting to see. But the reason why is not that people who believe in this are crazy. People who believe in going to conventions might be a bit daft, who wear funny ET helmets and big buttons on their ill-fitting, musty clothes. I remember I think it was the 5th anniversary of 9/11. I was downtown and I was talking in depth to somebody who was explaining to me the notion of holograms. And I thought, wow. Now, again, that doesn't mean that there is no truth to it or that the subject matter, just like I've met religious fanatics. There used to be a guy on Broadway. On Broadway, maybe, in fact, 52nd Street, up from around where Gallagher's is. And he had this elaborate sign of, the end is nigh, Jesus, repent. And I thought, now, is he crazy? I don't necessarily think so. So somebody told me one time, well, does he hear voices? I said, well, what if the voice is God? Why is he crazy? Then we got into this whole thing. Well, why is he crazy? And why, by the way, don't other religions have people on the corners who ask you, this is your last chance before the mothership takes us away? Religion is one of the most fascinating things ever. I have these hypothetical discussions with God or Jesus. And the first question I was going to say was, how does it feel when you consider the number one manifestation of mental illness in so many cases is people who believe in you in a rather exaggerated way? I find that interesting. Well, why not? So I've always loved to explore things, but people don't like that. If you really want to talk politics. And whoever came up with the idea of don't talk about religion or politics, well, what else is there to talk about? What else would you not talk about? Why is it that why are you? It's weird. I said, why is it? Most people don't know that our engineering board up tonight, Kevin Moondog Dresch, Drosh or Dresch. It depends. Dresch is a past tense of Drosh. And by the way, it's also a unit of weight in Latvia. But I asked him one time, I said, what is it that you believe in? And he says, he's a bull mooser. I had no idea what this was. But picking up from, I think he's still not really sure either. But what is it that makes you who you are? Ah, yes. Who knew that death could be so lyrical? Let's take this off with Mr. Thomas. This is Lionel with you. Hour number 2 coming up of Another Side of Midnight.
The Other Side of Midnight with Lionel. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Alrighty, Lionel with you. Here we go. Everybody sing. Left side of the room only. Ladies only. Our number 800-848-9222. 800-848-9222. By the way, so glad to be Jackson at the board, or at the phones rather. And of course, Mr. the one and only Kevin Drosh, who, by the way, started off early as the first Leonard Barr impersonator. You've heard of Elvis impersonators and Sinatra, but Leonard Barr, Dean Martin's uncle, weird, but quite the draw in the Midwest. Our number is 800-848-9222. I love the notion of belief. I love to know why you believe what you believe. And how something, remember, when it comes to ETs, or as our friend Carl would say, or others, oh, that's crazy talk. But there was a time when I, in the South, became absolutely enamored by evangelical preachers. And I would go to, we had a lot of them, these weekend revivals, with the praise God in the name of Jesus. Oh, I loved it. And I was doing a talk radio show, and I had anybody who came into town, anybody who was really good. In fact, David Paul, I think, was one of the best. He was a little bit more obscure, but I was slain in the spirit by Ernest Angley, and I loved it. So anyway, I had on a lot of these preachers, and one of the the station manager, president, who knows, said to me, he says, I didn't know you were so devout. I said, oh, I'm not. I said, but this is theater. This is American theater. And from this came gospel music. This was completely different. When I graduated from college, I worked for a U.S. senator in Florida. And it was the best gig anybody's ever seen. And I was the point man in all the AME churches. And when he was running for office, I would go there first. I was like 21, 22 years old, representing the senator, Dick Stone at the time. And I got to go to all the churches in the area. I loved it. Absolutely treated so wonderfully. But I wanted to know what it was that they felt, what they believed. It's very, very real. These folks weren't making this up. They weren't delusional. They were absolutely positively involved in something which was so important and so critical. And I loved it. And then I got into the faith healing, and I would follow Reverend Ainsley. And when he came to town, I was slain in the spirit personally by him. It didn't take, but I was. And there I was in this, it's no longer there, but it was a venue called Curtis Hickson Hall. And it was just, I don't know how many people there were, but ambulances and people getting on wheelchairs and gurneys. And he was the one who became the inspiration for, or actually, Robin Williams, he says, in the name of Jesus, foul, deaf spirit be gone, yay. And he would hit your head with the palm of his hand. And he would, this isn't funny, I'm not trying to mock this, but he invariably would take somebody who was deaf, and he had the worst toupee. It was like a beaver pelt. It was just horrid, this, whatever this thing was on his head. And they bring this poor kid up. I don't know if she was part of the routine, but the kid was apparently deaf, or the child. And he would stick his fingers in the ear, in the ear canal, shake it with his finger, and he would say, foul, deaf spirit be gone, yay! And he would hit the child in the head, and he'd say something, and the baby would say, and he goes, he can hear. And I'm thinking, I don't know about that. But people would clap, and they would believe, and there would be music, and I was slain in the spirit. Did not take. But if ever you have not lived till you are lined up in the floor of this convention center, and he is going down the aisle with hitting people's heads, well, not hitting them, but touching their foreheads with his palm, and they are collapsing. And he had men who would catch you to make sure you didn't just hit your head. And he would have little not towels, but little almost like a miniature tablecloth in case a woman was wearing a dress, so her dress wouldn't fly up. Oh, it looked like, I'm not trying to make jokes, but it looked like Jonestown. People were just passed out on the floor. And he came up to me and he hit my forehead and nothing. He says, are you saved? I said, no, sir. And he said, raise your hand. I said, okay, here we go. For the gusto, for the big one. He said, repeat after me. And I don't know what the particular incantation was. And he put his hand on my forehead, but he pushed me. So I was a little bit kind of back on my heels, and I noticed these two fellers behind me had my elbows, and they were like guiding me back. And I'm saying, no, that doesn't count. So I just shot back up. I said, nope. Now, meanwhile, this is the truth, and I never let him forget it. My high school buddy was with me. He was like knocked out. I mean, something overcame him. Now, what do I make out of that? Do I believe there was something powerful? Yes. Do I think these people are crazy? Absolutely not. Could this be the Holy Spirit? Could be. I don't know. But all I know is these people had jobs and families, and they voted, and they're hardworking, and they so believed in this. And it was a textbook. It was wonderful, because this is what makes us who we are. We're not a dog. Yes, we go through the regular creature comforts and the likes and thirst and all that, but we have this other part of us, this intellectual yearning. We have this spiritual belief. We believe in the unknown and the mysterious. We love fables and mythology. And I know people are still trying to explain to me the New Jersey Devil and all these Pine Barren mythology. There's something about us. It's who we are. That's simple. Very, very, very simple. Let's go back to the phone. Let's go to, let me see here. Let's go to Harry on Long Island. Harry, you're on Another Side of Midnight with Lionel.
Lionel, how you doing? You mentioned one of your cohorts was using the name Moondog. Do you know the story behind that name?
Yes, I do.
Alan Freed?
Well, but I'm saying, I remember how about the fellow, the New York denizen, the street?
Yes, I was going to say, he sued Alan Freed when he got to New York from Cleveland. He couldn't use that name anymore, because this guy used to walk around near Penn Station with a Viking outfit on and a big beard, and he'd always be yelling about something, and he was on several shows.
Do you know that he became one of the most successful talk radio program directors in the nation?
Yeah. Okay.
Now, but do you remember? Let me. Wait. Do you remember? I thought he was wonderful. By the way, Moondog was also a name that was used. Moondoggy, kind of the bleach blanket bingo, the Maynard G. Krebs kind of hippy dippy beat, whatever. Do you remember in that particular spirit, Opera Man on 57th Street in front of Lee's Art? And Opera Man became the inspiration for Adam Sandler. And this Opera Man would stand up. I don't know who he was, but he was standing in front of Lee's Art, and he would hand out, I don't know what it was, but he would do this. It wasn't even opera. It sounded like a car, an old car trying to start on a cold morning. It was because this was his singing. And I just was absolutely mesmerized by him. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You do?
That's not me. I don't know what that is.
Okay.
That's you. That's your. There we go. Thank you so much. Let me tell you something. Let me stop you right there, by the way. This is the genius of Moondog Drosh. All of a sudden, he will pull up something that has nothing to do with it and then blame me. Is that you? He says. Of course it's not me. The man's a maniac. Here we go. Now, this is Adam Sandler, who, by the way, is to me is as funny as root canal surgery, as stillbirth. I've never understood why Adam Sandler was funny, but there were these people. Do you remember another New York character? This was the fellow who sold those either vegetable peelers. He was British, or he'd get a bunch of children's books, and he would sit in the corner and he would just sharpen knives or peel potatoes, and he had he lived in the Pierre Hotel or something, but he was a real character, and people know who I'm talking about. I don't think I think he's no longer with us, which is a nice way of saying he's dead. But those people made it so important. Now, do you think that Moondog was crazy? This is the one you're talking about. No, I'm serious. Do you think he was crazy?
No, I was a little frightened of him. I mean, he was a big guy.
Well, listen, I'm frightened by the size of Lincoln's ears, but that doesn't mean anything. But the point is, I don't think these people are necessarily crazy. I think they're different. And I think there's something so refreshing about him. I really do. I think they were so interesting. This blind Nordic Viking. I mean, what does he do? He gets up in the morning. He says, okay, I'm going to go out. Let me get my Viking. I got one Viking outfit, the cleaners. Let me get my staff. Let me go out. And those were wonderful days.
He was smart enough to get on television and to sue Alan Freed, so he couldn't be that dumb.
Well, but I mean, what did he do? He got an injunction. Big deal.
Yeah.
Did he get any cash? By the way, Alan Freed went through enough problems. I mean, the whole payola thing, but then sued by an ambulatory schizophrenic. I mean, think about that. And you lost. Remember, there was also, who was a friend? Was it Radio Man who would come behind and get women in corners and alleys and try to film them? Kevin would know about this. When it comes to the filth, the muck, and the mire of our society, he knows this. Remember Al Goldstein years ago?
Oh, sure.
Screw Magazine, Midnight
Yep.
Blue, Robin Bird. Those were great days. What was it called? Your bongo, bang your. I don't know. Anyway, I so much enjoyed our. New York was just more fun. There was a guy when I used to do mornings on WABC. I'd get up very early, as you can imagine, and there was this guy I would put him. It was a local ad for this drug rehab, and this guy was really low rent. He had like a card table. He looked like Lou Grant, kind of sat there, and he goes, and his ad was like this: "Look at you, you're a bum, you're drunk." And I go, "What do you mean drunk? I'm going." And he said, "Talk to the TV. I'm going to work." "Yeah, look at you. Your family hates you. Call us right now at this rehab place." Another one too. I understand. Remember the great one? You would know this, Kevin, if somebody can wake Kevin up. Remember that was it Brooklyn? It was this bridal hall that goes, "Where your dreams come true, 718. It was this couple, salute you. And I don't know where it was, but it was a local ad. It was wonderful. And I think somebody's either buying it it might be part of the Taylor Swift wedding. I don't know. But anyway, forgive me for just waxing nostalgic about great New York moments. I thank you so much. Anything else I can help you with, sir?
Speaking of what you're talking about, I used to live in the village in the mid-60s.
Is this a long story?
70s. No. And so there was a reunion down there in Soho, and I said, I'm going to wear an old hippie outfit, So I went down there, and after the reunion party, I went to my old, area in Bleecker Street and everything. And it was so different. There was no, chicken place where they sold live chickens across the street, or there was all, there were all condos, and there was.
Do me a favor. Stand by for one second. Stand by for one second. Stand by as I, of course, we can never talk over somebody. Stand by for a second, sir. Let me remind you, this is Another Side of Midnight with Lionel.
The Other Side of Midnight with Lionel on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Alrighty, Lionel with you. This is Another Side of Midnight. Our number is 800-848-9222. Mr. Drosh, who every now and then shows an incredible flash of brilliance, only interrupted by intellectual torpor and mediocrity. But for the most part, he is spot on. And I believe, is that correct, Mr. Drosh? You have found the Grand Prospect Hall. Let's listen to this great production work. Hit it.
Dreamed about it. It's been carefully planned. And here is the most important day of your life.
Oh.
We make your dreams come true.
The Grand Prospect Hall, 718-788-0777.
Absolute classic. The graphics of this, you can't believe it. I loved that. This was a time when people would say, they would insist, I want to do this. I want to sell this. It's me. It's my name. It was great. And I don't know what happened, but I love that. We make your dreams come true. I used to listen every night and wait for Yolanda Vega to do the lottery. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Kevin, normally that's not me. We normally don't play the commercial. Hang on a second. Let me explain this if I could, please. For the love of God, it's called a setup. In Florida, there was a guy named Stanley Hainan, and he had this company called Allied Discount Tires. Okay. So he had an advertising agency, as you can imagine. It's almost like consultants, you know. These ad people, it's like, okay. So he went and he said, listen, I'm going to go see the result of this ad company. So there was a fellow named Sam Bear, Behr, who owned a bunch of he was a shoe salesman in Florida. So it was the friend, just happened to be a friend of his friend, Stanley Hainan, who owned Allied Discount Tires. So he said, Sam, come with me. And they had a few drinks and, you know, they were feeling okay. But so they played what the advertising agency came up with. And he said, what do you think, Sam? He said, that's boring. So the advertising guy said, do you think you can do better, Mr. Shoe Salesman? And Sam Bear said, yeah, I can do it. So basically his idea was that nobody cares about your tires. Nobody comes up to you and says, hey, your tires are pretty. Your tires ain't pretty. Just buy them. They work. Anyway, so this is Sam Bear. I think we have that now, Mr. Drosh, if we could play this.
I'm here to tell you about Allied Discount Tires. You know we sell you tires 5% cheaper than any of the other tire stores' lowest prices. You drive in the Allied Discount Tire store, they drive your car on a rack. Now, they're going to give you great service. They raise your car up, and that guy gets in the pit. He looks up under your car. He tells you what you need and what you don't need. And that's all he tells you, what you need and what you don't need. He don't give you no pit bull.
Allied, home of Dunlop Tires.
Now, it's one of those ads that just were great. When ads meant something, they were just wonderful. They were terrific. They were just, I love advertising because I love the notion of what makes sense and what doesn't. Let me give you another example. One of the greatest failed commercials ever was one that people from our generation remember. If I told you, Kevin, you might even remember this during your moment of soporific somnambulation, but when it was, the ad was, Mamma Mia, that's a summer spicy meatball. Remember that one? Okay. Considered one of the greatest commercials ever, except for one thing. Nobody knew what it was about. Was it a tomato sauce? There we go.
Mia, that's some spicy meatballs, Jack. Sorry. Take 28.
You know what I love?
Out, Tony, and action.
That's a waste.
Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball. Cut.
Okay, thank you, Joe. You know what I love about the production of this is I like the echo effect. I really do. It sounds like it's in a cave. I like that. Well, anyway, that was wonderful, except for the fact that it was Alka-Seltzer. But nobody knew this. They didn't know what it was. It was this ad. Now, one of the other great commercials was, if I told you, Ring Around the Collar. Remember how annoying that was? Please, Kevin, you don't have to do this. I promise you. This annoying echo is just, it's enough to make me rekindle the whole psilocybin thing. But anyway, this ring around the collar, ring around the collar. People remember it. What was it? I don't know. It was Whisk. To me, the best commercial ever was when we could actually advertise cigarettes. And they would say, show us your lark. That was it. And you drive by and somebody would reach in their pocket and pull out their cigarettes. This is, of course, before they had COPD and dropped dead. But it got right to the point. And it's one of those things which was wonderful. Give you another example. Years ago, WABC, the old pre-current management, somebody had this idea where they were going to have a commercial for WABC. And we watched it, and this was the ad. You ready for this? This was the ad. Cop pulls over a woman. She's got curlers in her hair. I don't know why, but she does. And the cop says, license and registration. And you can hear her thinking, look at you, flatfoot. What is a donut store closed? And the tagline was, don't you want to know what people really think? WABC. And I looked around and I said, this is the stupidest ad I've ever seen in my life. And they look at, what? They spend a fortune. I said, first of all, because that's the way I was and am, I said, nobody wants to hear what the caller thinks. They want to hear what I think. This is ridiculous. And what? Plus, what are you, insulting cops? This is the most stupid ad I've ever seen. What is this, a mind reading course? Anyway, the point of all this is that whether it's advertising, whether it's spirituality, it's the human psychology portion of all of this. Now, who was it, Mr. Drosh? Was it our friend from Greenwich Village who wanted to go back in time? I don't remember. Was it Harry? No. Yes, Harry.
That was Carl.
Oh, No, Carl was gone. I was just talking to somebody just moments before we went to break, and he went to
Harry.
Greenwich.
Yeah.
Harry. That's what I said.
No, Carl he thought that the aliens are people that were from back in time or
Listen,
from the future.
Do you see what? Do you see why this? You see what this man just did? Kevin Drosh, completely wrong, caught flat-footed, and he makes up these incredibly fabulous ideas. They never happened, but he says it with such conviction. That's why he's going places. You put your money on him. Sure, he's crazy, but what if he's right? Okay, now, Harry, let me continue with you, sir. So you went back to Greenwich Village years later, and you couldn't believe how everything had changed.
Well,
and you were dressed as a hippie.
Yeah, and now when I say we had a chicken store, I mean this was on Thompson Street. You went in and picked out the chicken out of the cage, and they chopped the head off and put it in a bag, and it was hot. You know, that when I lived there. The first thing I noticed when I got there, I didn't smell incense. I used to always smell incense in the street.
Wow.
And that chicken store was a condo. And these people were all so clean and looked like, and they were tourists, and they came up to me with big smiles on their face. Some of them grabbed my arm. They were so pleased to see me because I was what they expected to see there and weren't seeing it.
Now, let me ask you something. When you were dressed like a hippie, did you look like an out-of-work narc? Like some kind of an anachronistic...
Well, they bought it. I had the bells and the beads and the funny hat with the beer tab, tab around the top of it.
Harry, do you remember when we had pull tabs, of course, as you mentioned, instead of on beer cans, and they would link the pop tops or the tops as chains?
Yeah,
when you would for doorways, so that when you would walk through, those very sharp aluminum would slice you up as you walked through. It's like, who came up with this idea?
Oh my God,
Harry!
Listen,
yes,
can I mention a commercial? I'm dying to mention this. My favorite of all time.
Please, sir.
They used the William Tell Overture for the music.
Yes,
and it was for pizza roll. Have a pizza, have a pizza, have a pizza roll. And suddenly, the hand would grab the guy doing the commercial on the shoulder, and it was the guy from the Lark commercial, the blonde guy with the suit, and you could almost see the Lark cigarettes in his hands. And he says, I want to speak to you about that, because they used have a Lark today. Right. And then there's a hand on his shoulder, and the camera backs up, and it's the Lone Ranger in Tano. And Lone Ranger says, I want to speak to you about this ad, too.
You know, wasn't there, during that commercial for the Alka-Seltzer, there was a fellow there that you probably didn't, his name was Ronnie Graham, and he was a fixture, and he had these kind of a rubbery face. I loved those commercials. You know, it was funny, during the breaks. Do you remember Robin Bird, late at night, this local access? In fact, Kevin was saying that when he was 9 years old, he actually padlocked himself into his room and had to be rescued by the fire department because he would watch Robin Bird sometimes for 3-4 days straight doing God knows what. But remember when it was almost dangerous? We had great public access where you would have the Dominicans screaming at the Puerto Ricans, and it was filthy. It was just the greatest stuff I've ever seen. Absolutely loved it. Listen, Harry, I thank you so much. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that immensely. Seriously. Let's go back to the fun, back to the phones. Let me see. Let's go to let's go to Dave in Arizona. Dave, you're on another side of midnight with Lionel.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my call, sir.
Well, thank you, sir.
I've been away from the East Coast for a while. I escaped
I'm sorry
the
to hear that.
Commonwealth in '94. Oh, I'm not at all. There were no jobs when I was back there in the '80s and '90s. So, but
what did you do? You were a male escort, were you not? From what I understand.
I was, and the pole got too slippery. I didn't want to throw out my back. So, yeah, thank you. Thanks for reminding me.
Very
what
good.
I did in my younger days.
Comeback.
I appreciate you.
Good comeback, sir. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, being out of the loop on the East Coast, I'm just wondering what the thoughts on the streets are with this Marxist jihadist takeover of the Democrat Party. I predicted this in 2019 when the meeting between then Speaker Pelosi and AOC was released by AOC's press team first. I knew at that point that the Democrat Party had ceded to the Marxist socialist anarchists, but I don't know what it's like on the streets there in the Empire State. So if you could share, that'd be great.
I'm going to say something, and I don't think people might not want to hear this, but if you walked outside, most people don't know who the mayor is. They don't care who the mayor is. It doesn't really. It takes a long time for it to kind of trickle down. I think that what you're finding is AOC and Nancy Pelosi, and even the other day when Tish James and Carville are turning against a huge swath of new, younger Democrats who actually are, they admire Mamdani, by the way, a man whose name nobody can pronounce. And what I've been saying for the longest time is the Republicans and the Democrats better realize one thing: everything is changing. This could very well be the future, not Marxist socialist. I don't know if anybody even knows what that means, because most people who use the word communist couldn't even define communism if you put a gun to their head. They don't know what it means. It really means kind of a welfare state. It's not true, planned government. It's not really classic socialist. It's this bastardized version of it. But let me also tell you what's happening. There are people right now in the Republicans and the conservatives. You have people like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Joe Kent and Massey and a lot of other people leaving, forming their own version of this. And it reminds me, for lack of a better word, kind of a Southern strategy redux. You're seeing reconfigurations of the party. And I will go one step further. And you will see very, very soon that this notion of the left-right paradigm is over. That is a relic from the past. People don't think parties, they think people. Now, may I ask you something, Dave? If you were to run for office, what would your main position be, your thrust, your worldview? What would be your motto, so to speak, sir?
Well, I'm actually an elected precinct committeeman, so I
really
represent 1,600 people in my local precinct. So people that are all in the same school district as I am. I tried to get that position in May of 2020.
What do you do?
7 months to obtain that. And then
what do you do as that? What do you do?
I go to political events throughout the state of Arizona. I stay in tune with a local legislative agenda. Stay in touch with the school boards in my area. Who's running for school board, what their platforms are.
It sounds dreadful. It sounds just horrible.
It's absolutely the best thing in the world. I'm trying to save the republic for my children. Absolutely, 100%. It's very rewarding, sir.
And do you ever are you allowed to carry a gun? And if so, have you ever taken a life in the course of your duty?
I do carry a gun.
Really, very good.
I've never had to pull it on anyone. So, yeah, I was a hunter back in Pennsylvania in 1980.
I'll bet you were.
Yes, sir. Well, I had to. Otherwise, we didn't eat in the winter. So we harvested whitetail every year. it was what it was.
And what about deer? You don't mean, by the way, deer. This was a racial reference to a white women. They were called white tail. Is that correct?
Correct, but that was again back in the poll days, and I didn't think we were going to go there again. But I appreciate you for bringing it up again, Lionel. Thank you,
Dave.
You've got an
Dave,
memory, sir.
Dave, you've got a great delivery. You don't miss a beat. You just go right into it. That's fantastic. You and I could take this on the road. In fact, if ever you can, yes.
Aren't we opening a Funny Bones in Pittsburgh at 7 p.m. on Friday?
You know what we can do is if
you're
you
my
can tell
opening
me,
act, or am I
saying,
your opening act? I can't remember.
But if
it was a split ticket, right?
Yeah, but if you tell me where you are in Arizona, I might surprise you. Raise my hand and ask a question. You'll say, I know who that is. I know who that is. Anyway, Dave, thank you, my friend. All the best to you, my friend. And I mean that sincerely. Let's go to Nate in the Bronx. Nate, you're on another side of midnight with Lionel.
I wanted to point something out with regard to our electoral system. Basically, and how people are informed about the issues. It's no doubt. It's no secret. It's no secret that the 2% of the U.S. population that's composed of Jewish Americans is mostly on the political left. But what a lot of people don't understand, or at least are not aware of, is the inordinate, disproportionate control and ownership over the mass media corporations that 2% controls. No.
Can I ask you a question? Serious. Can I ask you a question? Seriously, I got to ask you a question. Are you an assassin? Seriously, did you say, I'm going to call this show up and I'm going to just kill it? I'm going to kill it. I mean, seriously, is this what you do for fun? You're a sick and a demented man. I appreciate your your spunk, but not now, sir. Have a nice day. Please call us again next year. There's nothing. All of a sudden, we're having a good time. We're talking about just exciting. This guy's going up with the Jews own the media. Okay. Talk about the Egesta floating in the punch bowl. My God. Let's go right now to a man by the name of Oliver. Oliver's in New Jersey. Oliver, you're on another side of midnight with Lionel.
Good morning, Lionel. Lionel, what people sometimes fail to see is the other side of the political situation here, the internecine conflict that's taking place between the sort of Afro-Hispanic and the newcomers, most of the Muslim population that's moving into the Bronx. And you have a lot of, especially the Hispanic population, that sees the Muslim moving into the Bronx as a threat. The Asians in Queens, they want to keep that turf. This is a turf war now between the various groups: Asian, Muslim, Hispanics, blacks, Jews. More or less still control Brooklyn, but especially the Bronx. You are beginning to see this sort of conflict between Muslims and the Hispanic.
Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this coming to a head? And if so, what will it look like in the immediate future?
Well, I think it sort of started a few years ago. Obviously, the media doesn't focus on that. The media, let's face it, it's focused on the relationship, between the people of color and whites. But that's not really the end of the story.
Indeed.
So basically, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Just like, in the 60s, you had Jews and blacks, fighting over the Board of Education and so on, and other areas. But you're beginning to see this conflict now between mostly the Hispanic population and the Muslim population.
Now, let me ask you something, sir. Where is this going? And do you see trouble on the horizon, or just this is another example of some of the usual vicissitudes of life? What is this?
The political battles of all these groups across the world. Really, we see this all the time. In Africa, for instance, we saw the Indians in Uganda, competing for resources, and eventually Idi Amin chasing them out, and things like that. You see this in South Africa too, how the Asian population is growing in influence, and in places like Peru, where the Japanese, oddly enough, also have influence. And in Guyana, you see blacks and Asians, particularly Indian population, who are at odds.
Oliver, may I ask, where are you from originally, sir?
I'm Italian.
Okay, I wish you would leave. I'm just kidding. You are a man. You are a man of the world. Is this normal? Is what you have described? Is this? I don't want to call this a diaspora, but is this what happens when mankind spreads and wants to take over and dominate a particular area with their own culture, their own language, their own influence? Is this just natural, or do you think there's something, dare I say, sinister involved?
Okay. First, let me say, if I may add a footnote here, most
Certainly.
of this research has already been done by people like Thomas Sowell, the great Thomas Sowell, who's still alive, 90 plus years. But I mean, there are certain, I guess you can say, from a Max Weber point of view, the idea that people's orientation are different. Some people tend to focus on the economy. Some people tend to focus on political matter. Some people tend to focus on cultural matter. But you have some groups, let's say like, the Asian population that comes to this country, they go right into the business world. The Irish that came earlier, for instance, they went right into the political aspect of it. That's how they got wealthy. They controlled, Tammany Hall and Chicago, and, the dailies, etc. And they went right into the political.
Who is this again, sir? I'm sorry. What group is this, sir?
The dailies, the Irish.
Okay, the Irish. Yes.
Yeah, the Irish. For instance, they never really started any industry other than maybe pubs and bars and things like that.
Listen to you.
Let's say, unlike, let's say, the Italians, they went right into the restaurant business and things like that. The Jews started out as in the clothing business, maybe the bagel restaurant business, and then they went right into the culture. They went to Harvard and Yale, and they became the lawyers and the doctors, and so like different groups tend to orient themselves in different manners. You don't expect Indians to become lawyers, but they do become doctors. Things like that. What the reason behind that is, it's hard to tell. But why do certain groups go into certain areas? The Italians.
What I thought was very interesting in New York here when I first came here, I thought, what was this proliferation of Greeks and diners? How did that work? And then I saw later on a special about that, or a documentary. And then there were individuals, I learned that on bodegas were Koreans. And then they were, of course, everybody who makes New York run is, of course, Mexicans. What I'm also seeing something, I don't know if you've noticed this as well. There is an incredible proliferation of this, maybe it's the gig economy, but these delivery folks on these bikes, which I think are going to be the end of humanity. Because if you're going to be hit with somebody going 35 miles an hour with some pizza in the back, and they're missiles. But isn't it interesting how, whenever you order any kind of delivery, DoorDash or Grubhub or whatever, the people who come to your door are not Americans. These are the hardest working people. And they're doing jobs which, of course, Americans don't want. And a lot of them are African, and I'm kind of getting an idea of where they're from. A while back, do you remember, I don't think we see this anymore. Maybe we did. But do you remember that whenever it was going to rain, you knew it was going to rain because the Nigerians or whoever would start selling umbrellas on the corner. And they were impeccable in terms of being able to predict rain. Have you noticed that? I don't know if they're here anymore.
Yeah, they replaced the Chinese. The Chinese ladies, used to have. I remember when I was working downtown by the seaport. It was the Chinese lady, and then the Africans took over. The same business of selling umbrellas and things like that.
And you always had to have that one official New York black umbrella that lasted, I don't know, a couple of weeks, and then it would break, of course. But it was that it had the little spring attack. Anyway, let me tell you something, Oliver. You have fascinated me with your recordation of the various demographics, and I think it's just so interesting what you have been able to detect. And by the way, lest somebody be confused, you don't speak with any degree of derision or blame. You're just pointing out facts. You're talking about the multiplicities of demographics, taking certain businesses and just the way society moves. It's how malleable and protean we are, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's unfortunately too many people, like some of the people that call about the Jews. I mean, this tendency toward malice, toward conspiracy somehow. People are up to no good. It's really one of the most destructive way of thinking that you can think of.
Oh, absolutely. And you can also tell by the tenor of it. If anything, if it was, I hate to say it, but if it was congratulatory, that's one thing, but it certainly isn't. Oliver, I thank you so much, my friend. Thank you so very much. I was talking the other day to Kevin Drosch, who is answering well, not answering, he's working the board, at least that's what they call it. And I didn't know this. This is very interesting, but when he was a young man growing up, he was abandoned to the wolves. And then the wolves abandoned him, which is very interesting. And apparently his real name is either Arapaho or Cree, and his actual given name on his birth certificate is Otukwa, which of course involves sounds that do not have any accompanying letters, which is the story of my life. Our number is 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. More coming up on Another Side of Midnight with Lionel.
The Other Side of Midnight with Lionel. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
800-848-9222. Yes. This is normally a song you play on loudspeakers during invasions. 800-848-9222. By the way, it's funny, coming up later, we're still going to get the official word. Kevin Drosch will be doing his one-man act based upon the life and times of I can't even get this out, Gigi Allen. That's all I'm going to tell you. Just look that one up, okay? Just look up Gigi Allen. Kevin, have you ever heard there's a fellow, I'll get the name for you. It just came to mind. I used to always play him. He was a schizophrenic, a black man who would headbutt people, and he would play songs. I'll find it for you. It was so bad, so horrible. But then people like Mojo Nixon liked him, and he caught on. I'll find it for you later. It's the most disturbing music you've ever seen. Speaking of disturbing, let's go back to the phone. Let's go to Charlie in Brooklyn. Charlie, you're on Another Side of Midnight with Lionel.
Lionel, speaking of disturbing, here's how far back I go with you. I remember the day that you pissed off Kevin Meaney, and he hung up on the air.
No, he was in the studio. No, he was in the studio.
Oh, yeah, and I remember what it was about, too. You asked him, where's comedy going? It was an innocent question.
I know.
And he said, what do you mean where's comedy going? What a stupid question. And he stormed out. Oh, I thought he was on the phone. Oh, my God.
People
and I love
went.
Kevin Meaney, too. Killing your father and I. That's not right.
But it's so funny. It's so funny you say that. People came in almost as though they were from like security. And I remember that. Oh, I could tell you so many stories, things that worked and things that didn't, and things that were just the worst stories. But that was a long time ago. What was the name of the woman? I'll get this story straight. My head is filled right now with so many names and so many things because, especially in the night, I have a hard time grasping some of these things. But those were the days. When I first came on board, I had this idea that I thought that Nancy Kerrigan was awful, that I liked Tanya Harding, that I admired her because she went out and basically clubbed Nancy Kerrigan because she was scrappy. And I made this story up about how I admired her tenacity. She basically went out and kneecapped, Nancy Kerrigan. And people were just aghast because they didn't know who I was. They didn't understand my sense of humor. But I kept talking about Nancy Kerrigan. And when she was actually hit, she said, "Oh, why? Why?" I said, "Yeah, why me? She wanted you to be hit." And I came up with these ridiculous extrapolations, all in the name of comedy. Well, one day, they looked at me through the window and they pointed to the green room, which you could see. And in the room was Nancy Kerrigan. I'll tell you what happened to that story coming up on Another Side of Midnight with me, Lionel.
The Other Side of Midnight with Lionel on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Lionel with you. It's one thing that I got to tell you something. It's so great working with Kevin. You do realize that when you're playing that, I hear that, and it just throws me all off because I'm thinking, is this on the air? Is this live? You see, that's the mark of a great engineer. See, playing by the rules is easy. Doing things that make intellectual sense. Anybody can do that. But to throw this kind of a rococo recherche, kind of a weird Dada-esque, it's Dali meets Rip Taylor. That's what we're all about. And I mean that sincerely. 800-848-9222. By the way, speaking of great music, I don't know if you're ready to go with this, but Kevin, I don't know if you ever heard about Wesley Willis. Wesley Willis was a famous schizophrenic, weird, I shouldn't say weird, but he was kind of tragic. And I think it was Jello Biafra, or people really caught on. He would play in this one particular style. Mr. Drosh, do we have any of his music available by any chance?
I whoop Batman's ass.
There we go. Hear that.
I whooped Batman's ass.
Now, I think you can hear, you can hear a lot of the kind of a little bit of Jobim in there. It's kind of like a stultified samba. Wesley Willis, all his songs sound like that. They're just incredible. Later on, there was the Langley School Project we'll play for you. This was just horrible. Not horrible, but it's called Innocence and Despair. One of the name itself will kill you. You either get this or you don't. Believe me, I've been in places where we play this, and somebody comes up and they're looking at me like, "What is this?" And if you have to tell people, what are you going to do? They do a version of Space Odyssey that is so, I don't want to say bad, but there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's a group on YouTube called Foxes and Fossils. Very, very good. Father and daughter, and really good. This is not good by any stretch of the imagination. But have you ever noticed when something is so bad that it's actually, in a strange way, tantalizing, in a very demented way? In any event, my friends, our number is 800-848-9222. We have covered the spectrum, and I mean it in that respect as well, from extraterrestrials to belief systems to great commercials to vintage New York. And it has been absolutely one of the most fascinating things there are. I'd like to go back to the phones, back to the fun, 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. Let me see. Let's go to David in Manhattan. David, you're on Another Side of Midnight with Lionel.
Hello, sir.
Hello,
years
David.
ago, people that were spokesmen for, in the advertising agency for certain products. And one of the products was Manhattan Shirts. Mm-hmm. And the spokesman's name was Colonel Whitehead. And my friend and I, we were going to lunch. It was, I believe it was like on Fifth Avenue we were walking, crossing the street, and it's crowded. And all of a sudden, he must have just been coming from a photo shoot because he was dressed in his normal. You would see him in the magazine in a white shirt, and he had a patch over one eye.
Ah, so like the Hathaway man.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So we're crossing the street, and I see him, and I go, "Oh my God! Look who it is! It's Colonel Blackhead." And the man's smiling at me, and all of a sudden, this look in his face. I didn't mean to say it. He wanted to spit at me. Now my friend has a contagious laugh. One of those laughs that it hit him so hard. He physically fell on the floor in the middle of the street. He fell on the floor and he's rolling. And
a paroxysm.
Right. I'm trying to console him and get him back. And this man is looking at me like, and I'm saying, "I'm sorry, sir." It was just a hoot.
That is so good. I appreciate that so much, my friend. Thank you so much. 800-848-9222. 800-848-9222. The hijinks, the mayhem, ladies and gentlemen. Dave in Pennsylvania, you're on another side of midnight with Lionel.
Lionel, can you hear me all right, or should I turn speakerphone off? I have the phone away from my head.
Oh, no.
I'll turn off.
What are we going to talk about? Dave, what are we going to talk about?
Lionel, dulse. I used dulse in my pasta sauce tonight. It even had roasted diced tomatoes in it. And I'll tell you what.
Dulse?
Dulse, the LG supplement to food, sprinkled. I did it liberally for me. I don't know if you have any in your wife's kitchen. Did pick me up when I woke up after drinking beer yesterday. I did not have a hangover. I felt fine. The Orient, more so than the Ivy League schools and places like Oregon State University in Corvallis, and possibly some of the state university system of California. Lionel, are you there?
Dave, I'm trying to first figure out.
They are trying to feed the world. We have a growing population.
We certainly do. Dave, I thank you so much. Give me a call next week. What a fascinating man. Lest you think, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you understand something. I am your bus driver. I am your bus driver. And that call, very interesting man, is just can take the call. It's like you having the bus driver have somebody run up and grab the steering wheel and drive it into a wall. It's one of those things, and I appreciate that. Believe me, don't think for a moment that I don't appreciate a very unique, interesting caller. Some are just terrific. I told you before, we used to have, when I did this, people calling up and just sleeping, snoring on the air. And it was so rhythmic and so perfect that it was wonderful. Years ago, by the way, to give you an idea. See, Kevin would understand this. One time on the old WABC, doing morning show, the board operator said, "Don't pick up line 5." I said, "Why?" He says, "This man's asleep." I said, "What?" He said, "He's asleep. He's asleep." And we pushed it, opened up the phone line, and you can hear this snore. And it was so rhythmic, it was legitimate. And we wait and come back, and there he was. So I said, "Do me a favor. Just bring this up as a bed. Just let this snoring go. Just let it go. Not loud enough, but just where it's too loud, but just loud enough where you know it's there. Just let it go." Throughout the entire, interesting, you see what Kevin did? You see what he did right now? you might think to yourself, that was obtrusive, it was unnecessary, and frankly amateurish. And you'd be right. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. In any event. So as this was going on, we had on like somebody like Pete King or somebody. And he said, what's that noise? I said, it's a man snoring. Don't worry about it. Oh, okay. And he continued through traffic, through the commercials, through everything. Okay. This was the best part. One of the programming geniuses at the time said, you know, that man was snoring. I said, you know, nothing gets past you. Very good. Excellent. And he said, well, why did you do this? Now, everybody loved it. Everybody loved it except this guy who had the creativity of an onion ring. He had no idea what was going on. I said, well, let me put it to you this way. Let's talk about this thing called TSLs, time spent listening. Do you know how many people waited in that car and kept back and kept coming back if they left to see whether the person was still asleep? Do you have any idea? Do you have any idea of what this was? And it was always frustrating. It's like something that's just different. Something that's just, I see it as being unique. Other people don't see it. Give you another example. I thought this was, I'll never forget this. Years ago when I was doing talk in the, I guess, 80s, late 80s, mid 80s, whatever it was. I had a fellow on who was trying to make people aware of the fact that we needed an organ donation system, that when people were looking for an organ, people whose life depended on it, they should be able to have access to this. And this was before we had, computers and that sort of thing. And this fellow he needed a liver transplant. And it was really sad, but it was a very good point. It was to let people know that we have to do some better way of contacting people who need organs. Towards the end of the call, roughly, there was this absolute impassioned call. And this fellow said, hey, man, you can have my liver. And I said, well, you realize that you'll die because, we only have one. He said, oh, and that was it. And even the fellow who was in the liver, we were hysterically laughing. It was one of those moments. Yet there's somebody, of course, in the building who didn't really understand it. One time there was a woman, the story was about, are you 486 or are you against it? Which is a pun 3 people understood. But in any event, and this was the spontaneous abortion pill. And I had a pharmacist on, and it was just about spontaneous abortion. The word was over spontaneous. It induces an abortion. Okay. We had a few minutes to go, and there was one caller. I said, you know what? Let's just go to this last caller. And it was a nice, ostensibly an elderly lady. Remember, we've been talking about abortion the whole hour. And she says, I just have one question. Is there any negative effect on the child? And I looked at the pharmacist and I told the board up, I said, don't play any music. Don't play any alcohol. Let's just end with that. Let that just echo into the ether. I couldn't believe after an entire hour. So those were the moments which I find fascinating. And let me explain something to you. You are what's critical. Now, in the last moments of this, I want to go back to where we started at first before we had this wonderful desultory and somewhat elliptical review of matters in addition to that which we're talking about. But I wanted to pick up on why people believe what they do. And more importantly, if anybody has the courage to do this, I think you do, is there something that you will admit that you believe in that nobody does? Witchcraft, Wiccan. Are you a pagan? Do you believe in, I don't know what's absurd to believe, but I'm curious how people find themselves in various levels of belief. Years ago, there was this thing, I'm sure Kevin may have heard about this. This is where promise keepers, men would go, I think, into the woods in a loincloth, banging on a drum, which, by the way, Kevin has been doing for the longest time on his own, normally in rest areas along the turnpike. But these men would go out to try to reconnect with their primal man or male, and they would hang around other men in loincloths, banging on their drum. And I used to say, I think I know what this is about. But I talked to those people, and it fascinated me because it was something they believed in that I did not. What do you believe in? This is Lionel with you on The Other Side of Midnight.
The Other Side of Midnight with Lionel. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
All righty, Lionel with you, 800-848-9222. By the way, just found out that the name Another Side of Midnight was coined by Kevin Drosch. And by the way, that was second to my initial choice was Bowling for Sports Shirts, which, call me wacky, I think that kind of captivates it more than often. We used to have this thing years ago at this radio station I was at. They always said bulletins at once. And that was their thing, bulletins at once. And I opened the mic and I said, can I ask you a question? I said, isn't the definition of a bulletin at once? If I were to say, wait a minute, Japanese attack Pearl Harbor. Wait a minute, that's an old bulletin. It's a bulletin, but it doesn't apply anymore because it's not at once. Isn't this redundant? So help me, they changed everything the next day. They just got rid of it. I said, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I got to tell you one more that was also, this is one, because I thought to myself, maybe I just don't get it. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. This media promotion stuff. It was at a radio station where they spent a fortune on this billboard. And on the billboard was it looked like almost like a runway light with a candle power you can't believe. And it said, when the light is on, the news is on. This is what it said. So we were a talk radio station, actually number one talk radio in the area. And I, of course, we're at these meetings, these insufferable meetings. Oh God, back slapping. It's just a waste of time. Nothing important ever was invented or developed at a meeting ever in the history of mankind. D-Day, no meeting, just back of a napkin or anyway. So we're sitting around and we're playing this, we're seeing this, and they're showing us how the board operators, the engineers, at the top of the hour, bottom of the hour, would have to push this button, which would send a signal out to these billboards, and the light would go on. So I raised my hand, which always was a hint, and I said, so aren't we saying when the light is not on, don't listen? And they looked in, and somebody says, yeah. I said, I'm just curious. And I said, now I'm going to ask something which is even more stupid, but bear with me. Why don't you just leave the light on so that people always say, oh, the light's on. Let me see what this news is. So somebody said, no. Why? Because the news isn't on. I said, but they don't know that. Anyway, this is when I realized now, Kevin, you'll get a kick out of this. You'll love this. We had another promotion one time, which is fantastic. We loved the idea that we had our own dedicated pilot, our own plane in the sky. They were the traffic plane. And they were just so proud of that. I said, isn't this kind of ubiquitous? Don't they share the same kind of. And they looked at me like, what are you talking about? Don't you understand? We have our own plane. I said, well, who cares whether we got our own plane? Nobody cares about it. Anyway. So what they did was, you gotta think about this. They took an old plane, like a Cessna, whatever it was, took the guts out, and they had it on a billboard where it's coming out of the billboard and it looks like there's a pilot, and there's a kind of a propeller that's maybe if the wind catches it, it was operable, and it was a plane. Now, let me explain further. In the area at the time, there was 275 and I-75 met. They called it Malfunction Junction. This was the worst artery. It was the widowmaker of traffic. As people rounded the curve on their way to this major artery, they looked up and saw what appeared to them to be a plane coming at them, eye level. And they would veer. They would try to change lanes, and they were causing almost accidents. Now, think about the irony of this. The radio station was so proud. It was so dedicated to traffic that it disrupted traffic by having what appeared to be a plane coming at eye level, either lost or out of gas or something. The plane went up, let's say, we were there early in the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning. By 7:30, it was done. It was off. They wasted so much money because somebody had this idea for a promotion that doesn't make any sense. It's just this. I could go on and on. I just love ideas that go absolutely nowhere. And whenever it comes to people promoting things, they never ask the question, what is it that we're trying to promote? And what is it? Why do we want people to listen? Let's go back to the phones, back to the fun. Let's go to Dave in Florida. Dave, you're on another side of midnight with Lionel.
Okay, Lionel, full disclosure. I am a follower of Lionel Nation. And
God bless you.
The 1963 Club. And an inmate in the conspiratorium. So
now, the 63 Club, you were born in 63, correct?
Correct, Omente.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm the 58 Club, but you're the Kennedy Assassination Club. So well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. You're part of the clerisy, the conspiratorium. What's on your mind, Dave?
I am. Which makes it, the point being, you just said, is there any belief you have that nobody jives with? It's basically everything that I hear and say in the conspiratorium. You know, I talk about, I mention geoengineering, people's eyes glaze. If I say, this is the best one, and I had my red pill moment. You had yours on 9/11. Mine was on January the 6th. Of 2021. That was it. And I got a bit from you, and I repeat it over and over, and people just look at me, and I say that it was a work.
Oh, yes.
And then I realized everything I'm seeing is a work. I can't take it anymore. So
this was, by the way, that expression comes from, and you're from Florida. When I got out of law school. Pardon me?
I said, I'm not from Florida. I'm actually, like your beloved, I'm from the Jersey Shore.
Well, bless your heart. For some reason, it says Florida. I don't know why. But in any event, it doesn't matter.
I did mention Sarasota. So,
Okay.
I've never called the station before. So
I got to tell you something. When I got out of law school, I met and became very good friends with a guy who was, to his death, we were the best of friends, Gordon Soley, who was the greatest wrestling announcer ever. And I got to learn the business. This is when kayfabe was alive and well, when they really hid the secrets of this. And the notion of the work, there's the angle to it, but the work means, and my wife says it all the time, is a work. It's a phony. It's ridiculous. It doesn't matter. It's make-believe. It's not real. And so much of what's happening is a work. And I don't believe anything. I'll listen to you and I'll say, okay, but I won't necessarily adopt it. Anything I hear about war, anything I hear about the Middle East, I don't believe it. I'll say, okay, thank you. Let me look into this. Because you and I, and you and January 6th, the greatest trespassing conspiracy of all time. They actually considered that to be an insurrection. They called it that. They called it. Did you see those people, Dave, walking around with pot bellies and an eye patch here and there? They were going to.
Actually, I was at work. I work in hospitality, and I was at work that day, and my coworkers were walking around because everybody has a phone, and they were saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," and I said, "Don't you realize this is a work?" And they all looked at me like I was nuts, and I have to blame you for that. People think I'm nuts.
Well, another one doesn't mean you're not nuts. It doesn't mean you aren't either. But also, it's like it's a LARP. It's a live action role play. It's nothing is real. Everything is just absolutely. It's what they want you to believe. Have you seen this? What is happening regarding this Celebration 250? What is going on with that? I don't know whom to believe. I can't wait to see what happens, just to see the final result of this. See, how do we say this? There's this part of us that doesn't seem to learn. I was born, you mentioned this, in 58, but I remember in 63 when Kennedy was killed. I was in kindergarten. My mother was crying. Everybody was crying. And I remember this. And I thought to myself, even then I thought, how did they do this? We still don't know. I remember the Watergate. And I remember when MLK, RFK, JFK, Medgar Evers, you name it, Malcolm X, in 5 years, it was assassination. It was the quintet every year. This is what I was raised with. Then Vietnam. Do you know we're still, go on YouTube, Dave, and see, why did we go to Vietnam? Ken Burns is still trying to figure out. 58,000 Americans killed, and we still don't know. I realized this is a joke. This is an absolute joke, and it all started most probably after World War I. And right around the Versailles Treaty, at the beginning of Bretton Woods, and then the Jekyll Island and the UN, and all this stuff started to where the notion of maybe a globalist, whatever. But I remember the time they said, "I'm out of my mind," and I was emboldened by that. In fact, Dave, if somebody says, "Well, that makes a lot of sense to me," at first I'm saying, I got to rethink this. In fact, if most people agree with me, I'm thinking I'm doing something wrong. So I thank you so much, my friend. Dave, please call me again. You're a good man, my friend, and thank you for your support. Eduardo is calling from Tampa Bay. He's in a body of water, and his name is Eduardo. When he joins us, Eduardo, welcome to Another Side of Midnight.
Yeah, good morning. I think we talked a couple of weeks ago, but
what difference does that make?
First, let me say,
what difference?
I'm glad.
What difference does that make? We talked a week ago, a month ago. It doesn't matter, but that's okay. I love you anyway.
Yeah,
talk to me, sir.
Yeah. Well, I was going to come out. I'm glad to see President Trump is going to be helping out with the Venezuela earthquake relief. So that was good news to hear. Oh, yeah. I mean, 2 earthquakes, one back up to the other. I mean, that's horrible.
Wait a minute. Do you think maybe there might be something weird there?
I hope not. I mean, although California and Japan did get one at the same time, too. So,
do you think it is possible? Just hear me out. I'm not suggesting this.
Yeah.
But if we're able to figure out where certain tectonic plates are, if somebody could use a kind of a directed, I don't want to say energy wave, but something, a Tesla wave or some sort, to be able to hit critical points to cause an earthquake. Because if you could do this, you wouldn't need ever to fire a weapon. You could just cause natural destructions and then build the country back, charge them for it, which they can't ever pay back. Then you own the country. Think about that one.
Yeah. I mean, this is a wild guess here that I'm about to say, but nuclear testing underground. So that's what would come to my mind.
Well, also, or just some form of, if I could go out in the middle of the Pacific, let's say, or Atlantic, whatever, but if I could recreate, in the Pacific, there's more of them, a tsunami, cause an earthquake right at a pivotal point, and I can trigger a tsunami. And remember, first there's a destruction, but then we rebuild it and we end up owning it. Think about that.
Yeah.
It's not far-fetched. Anyway, what else is on your mind, my good friend?
Yeah, before I go, so,
yes, sir.
I mean, you have the owl sound on your signature song here.
I think it's an owl.
The last couple of days, 2 baby owls, and today, one of them started tapping on my window here in the back of the house.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know what that was.
So
they must have been doing it for like 15 minutes, and then they left.
Tapping on your window?
Yeah. It was. I go, what is that? And then I go out and, they're the same baby owls that I saw yesterday.
Interesting.
One of them started tapping on the window.
They are so fascinating how they can see in their eyes, and they can get mice and bats and hit stuff in the middle of it. It's just fantastic. Eduardo, I wish you nothing but the best, my friend.
That's great, yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a great and a glorious day. Let's go to Rich in New Jersey. Rich, you're on another side of Midnight with Lionel.
Hey, Lionel, I wait every weekend for you.
Thank you, sir.
9/11's been 25 years and nothing's happened. Well, maybe it has in a way. Let's see, the rise of the Muslims in Dallas, culture in the mosques in Florida, of course, Dearborn, Michigan, Jersey City, downtown Patterson, Main Avenue. How did the State Department let all this happen? Didn't Trump try to stop people from traveling from those countries in his first term?
No, not all Muslim countries, because Indonesia wasn't a problem. It was certain countries, and not because they were Muslim, but because they were terroristic or connected or what have you.
Yeah.
Now, how are you going to tell somebody, for example, that they cannot practice their faith? And let me ask you probably the simplest question. What did Muslims have to do with 9/11? And I ask that part rhetorically. What would you say to that?
Well, it's like 99% are Muslims that committed, but not all Muslims are terrorists.
How about 99% of them were Saudi Arabian?
Uh-huh.
Why are we focusing in on their faith?
Well, now is it a faith or kind of like a cult political movement, like communism, in a way?
And who are these? Do you know the number of people? Are you familiar? There were a couple of the hijackers who they said they were still alive. Remember that one? Do you remember some of these? Very interesting story. There was one hijacker in particular, Hani Hanjour. And Hani Hanjour was who flew into or was a pilot who flew into the Pentagon. And Hani Hanjour was denied, I believe it was what was her name? Rowley agent, whatever. Anyway, he was denied the ability to rent a single prop or just a plane, a regular, like a Cessna, because he lacked the rudimentary skills to fly that. But yet then, according to the story, did a 300-degree arc, dropped, 10,000 feet, and flew 6 feet off the ground into the Pentagon. And how did we even know it was Hani Hanjour? How did we even know this? Did he announce
Nobody
it?
saw that plane driving horizontally at that low speed?
Remember years, and not only that, if you've ever seen or driven around where the Pentagon is, you have long stretches and swaths where you can see this. And somebody told me something very interesting. They said, do you know that there were no accidents that morning? Can you imagine if you're driving along and you look over and there is a plane 6 feet off the ground? And a friend of mine who was a commercial pilot, I'm not going to mention his airline, but he said, I couldn't do that on my best day. And this guy did this. So anyway, so then later on, now remember, the Pentagon is also the most recorded place on the planet. I mean, there's cameras left and right. And they said, can we get a camera of this? A picture? And they said, well. And then finally you saw the very famous picture, right? The famous flash. It looks almost, I guess, and I'm no expert, it looks almost like a missile or something. It doesn't look like a plane. Have you seen that one?
It's
After
a blur.
years. Yeah.
Well, here's another statistics. It's nothing to do it.
And may I also ask you, are you familiar that with the first hit, the diameter was like 16 feet? The first hit. I mean, this is what happens. And I have found out that nobody wants to hear any research you've done. Now, I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, did anybody notice this? But what you'll find out is that people hate for you to affect, to question, to even call into question any official narrative, any, because they feel you're saying either it didn't happen or that maybe somebody is stupid for thinking it happened. I don't know what it is. Now, I don't know about you, but tell me the truth. Tell me exactly. Do you know what somebody, not too long ago, I was reading, and during Watergate, people always say that Deep Throat was Mark Felt. Remember this old man who was out of his mind, and they said, finally it was Mark Felt. He was like number 2. There is a group of people, a group of historians who say the real Deep Throat was Alexander Haig. And it's like, you know what? That makes more sense. Now, for the longest period of time, this story, this was a palace coup to remove Nixon. There's no doubt about that. Now, if I say that, if I tell you that story, that disrupts the official narrative of the evil Nixon and corrupt. And so remember, Tolstoy said history would be a wonderful thing if only it were true. And people hate when you say anything. Remember the Gulf of Tonkin? For the longest time, they said that had nothing to do with Vietnam. And then in an NSA cable, whatever, they admitted it later on. We were right. America hates for you to destroy the narrative. Hates it.
Yeah. Well, statistics. I mean, I've made this up. 99% of all criminals smoke, but not all smokers are criminals. If you could take statistics and twist them any way you want.
Well, no, you're talking also.
Of all terrorists are Muslim, but not all Muslims.
Well, see, this is what you're talking about. First of all, it's correlation versus cause. Now, 99% of all members of the mafia are Sicilian. Well, yeah, because you have to be Sicilian theoretically to be a member. 100% of the Yakuza, the Japanese, they're Japanese. Well, that's the Japanese organized crime. Well, that really isn't much of a statistic. You see, think about this, though. History is, Napoleon said, history is a myth that men agree to believe. Do you know that when Saving Private Ryan came out, that's what people think D-Day was all about. I got to tell you a story. That when Saving Private Ryan, I think it had come out or whatever. I was sitting at with a bunch of friends of mine at Gallagher's, and we're sitting around on a weekend, and they're talking about this Saving Private Ryan. And there was this guy sitting there, kind of like this. This was years ago, but it was like an older man. He might have been either in World War II or I don't know when, but he had a veteran's hat on. So we're talking about Saving Private Ryan and, Tom Hanks and how realistic it was. It was so realistic. It's Spielberg. It's so realistic. It's so realistic. And this nice gentleman said, may I ask you a question, interject, if I may join you? And we said, certainly, sir. He said, they were trying to find this guy, Private Ryan, right? Yeah, he goes, why didn't they just call him? I said, what? He says, do you think we couldn't contact people the other day? Do you think if somebody says, hey, anybody see Rich? Send a team out to walk across Europe.
That's from a movie. Anybody seen Richie? Yeah,
anybody seen? Movie. Well, that is a Steven Seagal. Richie. Anybody seen Richie?
Yeah. What's the story, Richie? That was another movie. What's the story, Richie? I think it was What was I going to say? Oh, gee,
It doesn't matter. Richie, I love you. Thank you so much, my friend. Have a good day. Let's go to Viviana in Brooklyn. You're on another side of midnight with Lionel.
Good evening. How are you tonight?
Excellent. How are you?
Excited about the 250 celebration. And
yes,
you had
indeed.
mentioned, what could that be about? What's going on? And I just wanted to share a few perspectives.
Certainly.
On May 17th, the president rededicated our nation back to God and asked him for his blessings over the nation. Things have gotten so out of hand and crazy. We know that it's only with God that we will get back the sense of peace, unity, and our American values again. We as a nation had relegated God out of our structures. Education took out prayer, Pledge of Allegiance. Media and movies dehumanized the man, and him being the head of the household, family in its traditional godly pattern. Was
gender, family.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this: when you said we took prayer out of the school, what if we said, okay, we're going to have a Muslim prayer? Do you mean any prayer or the Christian prayer?
I believe, because if we look at our original documents, the United States was dedicated to God Almighty. If you look even at the preamble to the states, I don't say force them, but we have had much more, much a better society when we had the Ten Commandments in schools.
Well, so you mean the Judeo-Christian, right? You mean Christianity is what you really mean.
Yep.
Now, there's a very interesting...
That is who we're standing for.
Well, it's a very interesting thing. Very interesting. There was a famous Treaty of Tripoli that John Adams signed, and I believe it's Article 11, comes to mind, where they said that in no wise should anybody think that the United States is a Christian country. Because at the time they had Mohammedans, they had Muslims, they had the Barbary Coast and the pirates. So they specifically said the United States is not based, nor is it a Christian, or any country for the matter, based on faith. You are free to enjoy it. And I think sometimes we were a little bit too eager to remove every aspect of God. But I think you have to be very careful whenever you say, let's bring God back. And by the way, thank you, Viviana. Please call me again. But you've got to be very careful when you say things like, let's put God back. Let's put prayer back. Let's put religion back. Because unless you specify what God or prayer or religion, somebody's going to come up and say, okay, we'll take care of that. And the next thing you know, you have calls to prayer at 5 a.m. I'm just saying. This is Lionel with you on Another Side of Midnight.
The Other Side of Midnight with Lionel. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Check out the Indian Lake connection. Speaking of 9/11, look up that information. Better yet, you know what? Don't do that. You do realize that the Partridge Family was based on the Cowsills and how their father was a beast. And oh my God, they were actually very, very good. My friends, let's go back to the phone. Let's see if we can get another call before we leave. Let's go to Andy in Minnesota. Andy, you're on Another Side of Midnight with Lionel.
Lionel, you are the best school teacher I ever had. You are fascinating, and your grip of the Lord is great.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, people bring a lot of stuff up. They never bring up the Saudi Arabia with 9/11, and most of the terrorist freaks were from Saudi Arabia, and also they never mention that China sent the virus over to America. They sent people who were sick. They knew, and they don't mention China. They just, because I know why, because communist China and Saudi Arabia have tremendous power in the United States today. No matter what anybody likes it, if people were sleeping, they were.
Do you remember? You remember, Andy, when they found? I don't know if it was Muhammad Atta, but they found a passport completely intact on the ground. How do you do that? How does a passport get out of the plane and out of the building intact? I don't understand any of this. See, but nobody wants to ask any questions or just dig in. We've just forgotten all about that completely. We've just said, you know what, that's the past. How about when Norman Mineta, the Secretary of Transportation, told Dick Cheney, hey, they're coming in, and he issued a stand-down order. And he said, sir, they're moving in. Shoot them, shoot them. What if I told you, and this is something which is very interesting, do you know how many drills and hijack drills and operations were going on that day, that very day? Operation Imperial Guardian and all these names. It just so happens that on the day of a hijacking, there were these hijacking exercises. You don't think things can get confusing when all of your planes are basically out on maneuvers? It's fascinating what history is.
I agree. And they also had the fifth plane that was grounded at Kennedy Airport. They thought that was going to be the fifth plane that was going to be hijacked.
Don't know.
That went on. Also, those terrorist freaks before 9/11, some of them met with Saudi officials in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
The big lawsuit by the 9/11 families has got to be looked at,
right,
because a lot of that stuff is being brought up, but they don't mention that either. They don't mention the 250,000 women who've been raped in Great Britain the last 30 years by
absolutely
people from the Middle East, Pakistan.
Absolutely.
Muslims, right?
You know what? You're so right about that. And it also goes to show you that we have this idea. And remember, people learn most of the stuff they learn is from cable news. And cable news, as you know, is a particular narrative that will only go so far. And when everybody, remember during COVID, they called it was the wet bars, or they call it the Pangols. And in Wuhan, they called it the Wu flu. And it's like, you've got to be kidding. Gain of function? Who didn't know that? Listen, my friend, I thank you. Please call me again next week. Ladies and gentlemen, what a show. Thanks to you and yours. And again, I always thanks to our dear friend, our good friend Jackson, of course, who takes your calls and parks you accordingly. And then the Mendy Rudolph of engineering, Mr. Kevin Drosch, of course, who is, let me tell you something right now, he is to radio engineering what Al Martino is to microsurgery. Thank you, my friends. Thank you so much for listening. By the way, you can follow me on YouTube at Lionel Nation. Thank you so much. It has been an absolute joy to be with you. We'll see you next week right here. And until then, my friends, as we always end with this valedictory, this sayonara, this adios, the monkey's dead, the show's over, sue you, ta-ta.
The Other Side of Midnight with Lionel on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Google Health. Stop chasing someone else's definition of health. What matters is what's healthy for you. Google Health offers a new kind of coach built with Gemini for effortless tracking, sleep insights, and holistic coaching tailored to you. Visit googlestore.com to learn more and start a new relationship with your health. Requires Google account, Google Health app, internet, and Google Health Premium subscription. Features subject to change. Availability and results vary. Not intended for medical purposes. Works independently of Gemini apps. Check responses for accuracy.